There's a lot to talk about in Canada soccer right now, so why not bring our show back? Footy First back for episode number 1. Let's get it going. That's right, folks. Nick McVicar and Niko Giantsopoulos back with you. Niko, it's been way too long since we've done a proper episode like this. And it's not a bad time to start. Canadian Championships getting underway this week. We got the CPL season in full swing, MLS action all over the place. But first, how are you doing, dude?
Not too bad. If you see my forehead is shiny right now, it's because I just had a fat bastard burrito and I think there were some jalapenos in it and it's got me sweating a
He's
little bit. So
glistening,
don't mind
folks,
the glare.
glistening.
Yeah. Yeah. So don't mind that. Other than that, I'm fired up. Like you said, Canadian Championship. We got the TFC Simcoe Rovers going on in the background here. As the show goes on, we'll have live reactions of goals or cards, whatever happens in the game. And also, everyone in Toronto will know the Leafs are in the playoffs. So I
Yep.
also had the Leafs in the background as well. So if you see my eyes shifting, it's not because I'm scanning my shoulder like a midfielder. It's because I got a lot of sports going on. But yeah, happy to be back. First official episode, season 2.
Season
As
3,
we said.
technically, of us, because we had, season 1 we started, and then we had another season of soccer start. So this is technically, if we really want to go with it, it's technically season 3.
We're gonna have to come to an agreement whether it's season 1 or season 2, but season 2/3 for now until we come together and figure it out. But yeah, I'm good. How are you, Nick?
I'm good, man. And there's a lot to talk about. So I'm really excited to have this conversation because, listen, it is a great time for soccer in this country. We have, as I already mentioned, the CPL, we have the Canadian Championship, but Canada soccer itself has so much going on right now that it's time to start having these conversations because they're really, really important. There's no better way to get it started. So why don't we get right to it and let's get into the Canada soccer conversation because their schedule for this offseason for the players playing in Europe looks incredible. Both the men's and women's have highly touted games. I mean, the Olympics and the Copa as well. But let's talk about the friendlies. They finally announced the women's team is going to have 2 friendly going away matches before the Olympics, which they didn't have ahead of the World Cup, which a lot of people criticized, and rightly so, because the team just didn't look ready for that World Cup. And the men are going to play 2 games against the Netherlands and France at the beginning of June as well. 4 matches in about an 8-day period. It's going to be a lot of fun. How important are these matches, do you think, for the women's team to start? And then we'll get to the men's team after.
Well, for the women's team, it's huge because going to the Olympics, they're the defending gold medalists, and there's going to be a lot of pressure on them to perform just as well as they did last year. I think, in the last, let's say 2 years, 18 months, I think their performances haven't been to the standards that they would have liked. So to get a good prep games in leading into this Olympics will be huge. And they're going up against Mexico at home. I guess my question to you, Nick, would be, do you think that's playing against the women's Mexican national team? Is that a good test going into the Olympics, would you say?
Absolutely. That Mexican team pushed the Americans and beat them in the CONCACAF, didn't they? In the round robin, of course, I'm talking, not in the knockout stage. They beat them 1-0. That's something really, really important. So I do think this is a good test at the very least for the Canadian women's team because it gives them a team that has that ability, has the ability to push these top sides. And if Canada believes they are a top side, you want to be pushed by a side that can do exactly that. This Mexican team is young. They're very talented. They're up and coming in CONCACAF. I really do think this is a fantastic opportunity for them.
Interesting. I almost felt like it was a bit too weak of an opposition going into it. And also, I know, how do you put it? You like to see different kinds of competition going into an Olympics, let's just say. You're playing teams from different nations, different regions of the world that brings different styles of soccer. If you're just playing, a CONCACAF team that you're probably pretty used to, I felt like they could have gone bit more challenging in these prep games. Maybe get a European side, an Asian side. Yeah, I don't want to stir the pot too much, but I mean, you look who the men have locked down for their friendlies. I think that's the kind of competition I was looking for the women's side to kind of go up against leading into the Olympics. And yeah, I'd be curious to get people that are involved in the women's soccer game, their opinions if they feel this is good prep games going into the Olympics.
That's fair, but I think all of the teams going into the Olympics, what they want to do is try to get confidence boosts, right? They're not going to necessarily play. You're not going to have the Americans play the French, for instance, right? You're not going to have the Dutch play Sweden. That's just not usually how it goes. You usually end up playing a team that you think you're going to beat. If you're going to do that, why not play a team that just, as I mentioned, just pushed the American team, who is widely considered and obviously considered the number one team in the world most years, to lose. They beat them 1-0. Like that can't be understated. I know that they didn't make it farther in after the groups, but still, that is a very important thing to remember here. This is a team that just beat the Americans, who the Canadians are going to want to emulate that result come the Olympics. Everyone's going to want to emulate that result come the Olympics because the Americans are the team to beat in women's soccer. So having a team that knows how to play against the Americans and knows how to rise up in those kind of games, I think is really important. Yes. Would you maybe have liked to have someone outside of the Confederation? Probably. But if I'm looking at it, this isn't a terrible situation. It's not like they're playing. No, I need an example of a country that's
Guatemala.
Really yeah, they're not. Or if I don't know if you saw this. Did you see the double IHF hockey's U18 score yesterday? 56-0. Like they're not playing that type of caliber team. They are playing a top team. It just so happens that they happen to be in the same confederation. Yeah, is that an issue? Potentially, but I think in the grand scheme of things, this isn't the worst issue to have.
Why the same team? How come they couldn't find two different nations to go up against?
That's normal ahead of the Olympics. If you're going to play it back to back, especially that close together in the same country, that's normal. That doesn't throw me off.
Okay.
I get your question. It's a valid question, but you have to remember a lot of teams don't want to travel twice, because you'd have to travel to Canada for one game and then go to the Olympics right after in France. So a lot of the European countries probably aren't leaving Europe, right? The Americans, maybe you could have got a game against the Americans, but it's just an extra travel cost. You know what I mean? And a lot of these federations just don't want to pay that right now, which I get, especially ahead of a big trip around the Olympics.
Yeah. Well, for Canada, on a more positive note, I should say, for Canada soccer fans, I think it's great that they're going to have two opportunities to see the women's national team play before they go off to the Olympics. As you said, the games will be in Toronto and Montreal. So it'll be great to get as many Canada soccer fans there in those stands, in those stadiums, and give those girls a good send-off going to the Olympics. And, hopefully they can represent the country just as well as they did last time. I know that was a huge moment for Canada soccer in general, and everyone in the nation is really backing them to represent us just as well as they did last time.
Yeah, and honestly, like you talk about the send-off. The send-off's so important. I think getting that confidence boost heading into the Olympics is something that it's almost immeasurable how important that is for any team. Any big tournament you're going into, having confidence going into it is so, so important. We saw it with Canada Soccer's men's side going into the World Cup. They had a lot of confidence going into that. I know it didn't turn out to be anything, but they played a really good match against Belgium. They had moments where it was really, really strong. So I think having that kind of confidence boost for a women's side who is expected to be one of the top teams in the tournament is going to be really important for them.
Yeah. On that note, and it might be an easy transition to move to now the men's national team. Toronto FC just scored 1-0.
Yeah, Prince Owusu header on a cross. Beautiful cross in. Far post. Yeah. Not a whole lot that the keeper could have done on that one.
Kobe Franklin. I mean, we'll get to this game after, but it'll be good to see these, the fringe TFC players make an impact in this game and prove to John Herdman if they need more minutes.
Absolutely. Let's kind of switch the side from the women's side to the men's side, and they also have two big matches in this window as well, where they're going to be playing the Netherlands and France over in Europe. It's so nice to see the men's side finally having friendlies against top competition. Most of the time, we've seen the men's team play against, well, maybe the Mexicans in the U.S., who are top competition, don't get me wrong, but a lot of the time it's CONCACAF opponents who aren't the U.S. and the Mexican side. It's nice to see them finally getting these top competition. Nice to see that the rest of the top competition teams are seeing them as good enough to play in these friendly matches heading into big tournaments, because there's the Euro coming up. That's what Netherlands and France are preparing for. Canada's prepping for the Copa America, playing against Argentina in their first match. These are big matches for them, and finally getting that kind of recognition is great to see.
Well, it's interesting. Let me go to your point, how you said it's good that these nations want to go up against Canada. Similar to how you said the women want to go and get their confidence up. Do you feel like Netherlands and France are using Canada as an opponent, not so much because they feel like they really respect us, but more so it's like, oh, this is a team that we could pop some goals in and get our confidence going heading into a big tournament?
It's potential, but at the same time, when you're going into a tournament like this as well, you still want to play top competition, which is why I said the Canadians wanted to play the Mexicans on the women's side. You still want to play good competition. You might still think you're going to beat them, but you still respect them enough to know that they are talented enough to play in these kind of matches. I think that's what Canada Soccer's men's side hasn't had for the longest time. They haven't had that respect of these top teams like the Englands, the France, the Netherlands, because to be honest, up until maybe 5 years ago, we really weren't competitive outside of CONCACAF. We had no World Cup experience outside of 30 years ago. And even then, we didn't really showcase well in the CONCACAF even. We have one win in CONCACAF. One, right? That doesn't really showcase talent. So now that we had the World Cup experience, now that we're showcasing that we have the ability to play against these top teams, while yes, they probably still think they're going to beat us, at least we're getting the recognition that, hey, this is a tough enough opponent that it can prep us for a big tournament. You know what I mean?
Definitely. And you mentioned the World Cup experience. That's why this news and this announcement of these two games was so big, because ever since we participated in the World Cup, I felt like everyone was saying, and the results didn't go as how we all hoped they were going to go. Everyone was saying, we need this. This is why we need to start playing, better competition, especially countries from other regions of the world. So, Canada, I mean, you go through Twitter during that time. That's what everyone was asking for.
That's what you and me were saying after the World Cup.
For sure. But now I'm going to say this to Canada soccer fans. Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Now we're going up against France and Netherlands. And it will be a great test for our men's team. But at the same time, it could potentially leave us a little bit exposed. But if a result comes 3-4-0, let's hope Canada soccer fans understand they've been asking for this the whole time. Go off the first encounter, and if doesn't go the way we hope, let's not just get all pissed off at our team and start dissing our boys.
No, and
you asked for this, so enjoy the experience, and we all know this is the best for the team and for the growth of the game.
Yeah, I agree 100%, and I think people need to understand what these games actually mean. These are friendly matches. These are to work on things. These are not, I know it's not competitive because it's a friendly, but these are very, very important matches to put yourself in the right spot in world soccer, right? Every match counts towards those FIFA rankings. So let's say in 2 years, we're looking at Canada being in the World Cup. We already know that. Well, what pot are they going to be in? I know they're the host. Yeah, so technically they're pot A. Okay, what about 4 years down the line? These matches mean something for that, right? So you want to go into it, you want to showcase talent, and you want to have good results. But what does a good result look like? And Niko, honestly, if we're talking about good results here, a good result against France might be a 2-0 loss, or a 2-1 loss, right? Get a goal, showcase the talent that you have, put pressure on a very, very top side in the world, right? Netherlands, same thing. Maybe a 1-0 result, maybe get a draw from one of these matches. That would be fantastic. Do I think it's realistic? Probably not. That's a very, very tough result to get from a top 10 team in the world, and both of these teams are sitting in the top 10 right now, I believe. And yes, I know we can have the conversation about the FIFA rankings being flawed. I get that, but they're top teams. We can both agree on that as well. Getting a result means different things to different countries, and this could be just limiting the goals against and having the ability to go forward and put pressure on the defense of the other team. If they can do that in these two matches ahead of the Copa America, ahead of their game against Argentina, that actually really bodes well for them in that competition, where I think if that's the case, outside of maybe that Argentina game, I think all the rest of their group stage games are winnable. I know that sounds crazy, but I think the rest of the group stage is winnable games outside of Argentina. And even that, depending on which Argentina side shows up, you could still get a result. Maybe it's a 0-0 draw. Maybe it's 1-1. I don't know if they can beat that Argentina side with Martinez in net, but it's a very, very winnable game outside of that. And I think playing against these Dutch and the French side will put them in the right spot for that tournament.
Yeah, I think it's also a good opportunity for Canada to show their identity and style of play. It's a lot easier to, have an identity and a style of play and almost, put your foot on the game when you're playing against, Guatemala, Trinidad and Tobago. How do you play? How do you stack up? What's your identity when you go up against the best in the world? I think we saw that in the World Cup, that it was a way different team than what we saw in the qualifiers into the World Cup. So now going up these two teams, let's see the kind of style of play they do, which I think is a great segment into our point number 2 here in the coaching search for the men's team.
Yeah, and it's a great segue because I think it is very important to talk about, because one thing that the new coach is going to need to do is they're going to need to be able to adapt, because if we're talking a game against, as you said, maybe like an El Salvador or a Trinidad and Tobago in CONCACAF, right? That style of play is very, very different. They do not play the same style as the French or the Dutch or Argentina or Brazil or any of these top countries. They play a very different style. They want to bog everything down, slow you down, force you to make mistakes. Whereas the French and the Dutch and the Argentinians, they're trying to just exploit your own mistakes that you're going to make because they have the talent to do that, right? It's different. It's faster paced. Everything is that way. They need to find a coach who has the ability to change his tactics, or maybe change the idea behind the tactic. Maybe not change the formation, but change how it's going to approach each individual team, which I don't know if we've had that in a while. As good as John Herdman is as a coach, I don't know if that was his specialty.
I think John Herdman's specialty was unifying a group and getting everyone on the same page and building a culture. And he did a hell of a job. And you see glimpses of him doing the same thing at TFC.
Yes.
Does Canada need a brilliant tactician? No, I think they do very much need someone like John Herdman who was able to unify the group. And finding that is going to be interesting. Sometimes I feel like Canada soccer fans get so caught up in the tactics and this and that. It's like there's so many different ways you can coach a team. It's not really X's and O's on a paper. There's so much more that goes into it. And finding this next head coach, or keeping the current head coach that Canada has in Mauro Biello, will be the biggest task that Canada soccer has.
And I laugh because we see all these names being floated around. Frank Lampard's name was out there for a while. Yeah, Frank Lampard. Frank Lampard's name was floated out there. I don't know how serious that really was, in my opinion, but hey, whatever. It was floated out there. He's turned that down for sure.
One sec. Let me point out, that was floated out there just probably as similar as me signing in Finland was floated out there.
Right. There may have been a conversation, but
media.
right? There may have been a conversation. Hey, are you thinking about coming back to coaching? And then he's like, no, I'm good. Right? Like that's probably where it was. I heard Thierry Henry's name was also floated out. Trying to think of other guys. Who else have you heard?
Tommy and Bobby.
Yep, Tommy and Bobby, obviously. And then Morrow, who I think has done a good job as the interim so far. I don't know. I kind of want to get your opinion on this because Morrow comes in as the interim and he's forced into a really tough situation right away because he has to pick a squad, like 2 weeks later for some matches. How do you think he's done as the interim manager of this side? And do you think after that he deserves a legitimate chance to be named the head coach?
Well, he had to build the squad, but he also had to build his staff.
Yeah, well,
I mean, Herdman took a lot of his staff at TFC as well. So I think he did a great job at trying to keep some consistency within his staff. So guys that he knew and that he could lean on and that have also been involved in Canada soccer. I'm thinking of guys like Paul Stalteri, who have played, has coached in the youth levels. I think of Paulo Ciccarelli, who was the goalkeeper coach. Same thing, has been involved in youth Canada soccer, and now he's with the men's national team. Jason DeVos for a little bit was involved as well. So I think he got his staff well. They're definitely guys that he felt like he can trust, which is, I mean, a coach is only as strong as his support staff, and he needs to feel like they're on his side. So that was probably the first thing he locked down when he got the interim job. How has he done? I agree with you. He had he was dealt a difficult hand.
Just timing wise, he was dealt a difficult hand.
Yeah. And I feel like the first camp or roster that he brought in kept it pretty simple. I don't think he made too many drastic changes. And in a short period of time, I think, my opinion, I felt like that was the right decision. Where I felt like he really and kind of proved to me like, oh, this is, he did well was when he going to the Trinidad and Tobago game. He had some big decisions. Was he going to bring back Steven Vittoria, Milan Borjan, the goalkeeper, some of the older aging players out of that roster? Was he going to play it safe and just bring them back to try to keep those guys on his side, or was he going to be a bit risky and bring in some fresh, young, hungry blood? He went with that. Obviously, Maxime Crépeau started in the game. You had other young guys come into the squad, and they get the result from Trinidad and Tobago. So from that decision, which I never saw any coach previously make it a big decision like that, that's to me that proved that he should be given a fair enough chance. Is it fair to assume he's going to have the job going into the Copa or no? Or the coach that will go into Copa will be, the next men's national team coach, and it'll be, there's no more interim role. Is Mauro Biello is his title still interim?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It's interim until they officially name a new head coach. So he could technically be an interim coach for 5 years if they just don't officially name a new head coach. Which again, it's a ridiculous thing, but regardless, I think your two questions, because you asked two questions there. A, I think he is he going to be the guy who's coaching at the Copa? I believe the answer is yes, because I just think the turnaround time right now is too tight. But I also wouldn't be shocked if they do announce a new person. B, is the person who coaches at the Copa going to be the official men's national team coach post Copa? I think that depends on whether or not they give the title to Morrow before. Because if they do, then I think yes. I think then he's the men's coach after. But if they don't, and he's still the interim coach heading into the Copa, that tells me they don't have enough confidence in him, and he won't be the coach post Copa. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. My hope for the team is whoever is the head coach going to the Copa will be the coach moving forward, and I think everyone's make a decision going into the Copa. Out of those names that we listed, Thierry Henry, big name. I mean, it sounds sexy to say, "Oh, your head coach is Thierry Henry." First thoughts on it? I don't think that would be a good choice. I haven't really seen him have much success as a manager. Obviously, he coached at Monaco, which was a big job. Didn't have too much success there. He went to Montreal, did an okay job, but I've seen other MLS managers um, do better.
Yep.
Um, Again, I think it could be a mistake signing a coach off a big name. It's kind of the same story with Frank Lampard as well. Uh, I wouldn't want to see Thierry Henry as the coach. Other managers that I've heard thrown around is the American lad,
Jesse Marsh.
Jesse Marsh.
Yeah.
Don't mind it.
I actually don't mind it either.
I've heard similar stories about his coaching style to John Herdman, where he could really galvanize a group, get them together, and motivate a squad. Very North American coach. I mean, you have North American players. I think he's coached in the higher levels, like at Leeds United in the Prem,
Yep.
and even at Leipzig, which kind of brings me into my next point of this is what I've heard from a player that's inside of that national team group. And when I was speaking to him about Tommy and Bobby, about do you think, they would be good for the coach? He's like, yeah. I mean, they've obviously proven their worth. The biggest issue for them would be convincing the European guys on the squad and giving them credibility. So I say that more so because with Jesse Marsh, he will have that credibility since he's coached at much higher levels. And if that actually is an issue within that group, then someone like Jesse Marsh could be a great option.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked by that. And the other thing I wouldn't be shocked with, and I don't know if this would happen, but because the assistant coaches can sometimes be part-time, right? Not all of them, obviously. Like the top guys are not going to be. I also wouldn't be shocked if one of Tommy or Bobby end up like as an almost like an advisor assistant coach on a Jesse Marsh squad, right? Like if Jesse Marsh is named because he understands where these guys come from. And he actually mentioned that in an interview. I can't remember where it was. But he understands how important that Canadian base is. And knowing that Bobby and Tommy have done such an incredible job in the Canadian market and know the players and know where the grassroots are and everything and how it all works, it might be a benefit to have someone like that as like, as I mentioned, as like more of an advisory assistant way down the line, not the guys who are there all the time. You kind of looking at me like I'm crazy, but
No. I mean, once again, we're all speculating. We're trying to, but I could see potentially. My biggest question would be: would the current clubs, Cavalry and Forge, let Tommy and Bobby go do that and take away their time and thoughts away from their current clubs who
yeah,
are
and that's the question,
have
right?
have big brands? My question that I kind of wanted to pose to you, and I'm not going to answer this question. That's why I'm asking you. I don't want to
Okay.
give Tommy or Bobby any bulletin board material going up against me this year. But between the two,
Yeah.
you're on the board. You're making the decision. Who are you giving the job to, Tommy or Bobby?
I'm probably leaning towards Bobby. And it actually has nothing to do with how they coach, because I think they're both incredible coaches and both would do a great job with the team itself. I think I'm leaning Bobby, and it's for one reason and one reason only: the number of Sigma players or players from the Ontario market that have come through the system that he knows so well that are on this national team and in the national program. And I know Calgary is doing a great job of now putting out talent, and the numbers are coming up in Alberta. Don't get me wrong. I actually really respect what Tommy and the Calgary team and the Calgary like grassroots level has done. But because Bobby has such a connection with guys like Richie and Kyle, and he knows oh so really well that fundamental connection that they have at that level, I think Bobby might have the inside track. Now, do I think if Tommy's named that he's going to have an issue? No, not at all. I'm just saying if I'm looking at it from an outside perspective of who I think would be given the head start, it would be Bobby, just simply because of that. He coached Kyle and Richie at the youth levels. He's coached against and knows oh so really well. I can name a bunch. Tejan, same sort of thing, right? That's the reason I give him the head start. Not to mention he's also won 4 championships in the CPL. That can't be discounted, right? Tommy's been to a bunch of finals too, and that's why he's up there. And that's why both of them are always in the conversation anytime an MLS opening comes up in Canada, anytime the Canadian national coach job is talked about. Both of them are always talked about because they've had so much success at the CPL level, but 4 championships to none, and the fact that he knows a bunch of the players on the team personally, I'm leaning Bobby, and it's by the slightest of margins, but that's the reason why.
Sure. Again, I want to get your opinion and kind of put some pressure on you as well. I like to see you squirm.
Squirm. Oh, good. I don't know. Do you think my point is crazy though? Like if we're actually
No.
talking about it, I know you don't want to give an answer, and I'm not asking you to, but do you think my reasoning for having Bobby as my number 1 is off?
Yeah, I'm sure if you ask that question to a bunch of people and the people who pick Bobby in that debate, the Sigma connection would definitely come up. So no, you're not crazy for that one particular point, Nick.
For that one particular, I know.
Yeah. Another name that I actually haven't seen, floated around as much as I was expecting was Wilfred Nancy. This
Yeah,
is a guy that's bilingual, French and English. Obviously, did a great job with Montreal in the MLS. Is now doing a tremendous job, MLS champions with Columbus. And I saw him tied into clubs like Southampton, rumored to coaching there. Now, why isn't he? Maybe he even is, and it just hasn't been leaked. Who knows? But I think that could be another really good candidate that is involved with this coaching position.
I would love Wilfred Nancy to be involved. Unfortunately, 1 week ago, he just signed a contract extension with the Columbus Crew, so I don't see it happening right now. But he would be a great fit as well. I do think Jesse Marsh, if we're talking about the names that we've already said, I think Jesse Marsh is the guy that I would go to if we're not giving it to Morrow, right? I think Morrow deserves a chance from what he's done, in my opinion. But again, that means literally nothing. But I think he's done a good job since taking over. I think he's done a great job putting this roster together, bringing in young talent, giving guys opportunities. And in those matches that we're talking about against teams that maybe aren't as strong, that's what you got to do. You got to bring in the young talent and cap tie them, because that's super important in international play. And B, give them a chance to showcase their talent and see how they work in the system. Because as much as you want to give credit to the guys that got us there in the Boryans, the Vittorias, and those kind of players, we got to get younger. We got to get faster. We got to adapt with the times too. So they may still be in the roster, but there's going to be new blood as well. And that's where I don't think they will be, but I'm saying they could be, depending on the game. They could be in the roster, but you have to have the new blood coming in as well. And I think that's what Morrow's done a good job of doing. And he knows the system well enough that it works, right? He fits the mold right now. So I think if we're picking right now, Morrow's my pick with Jesse Marsh second and Bobby third.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, we'll definitely be following along the story. I'm sure there's a couple more turns, twists and turns that's going to happen. But
just a few.
Yeah. But yeah, I think we did a good job kind of summarizing all the options there, and good luck to all candidates. I'm pretty certain that over the next week or so, the candidates are getting interviewed by the board
Yes.
at Canada Soccer. So look forward to the announcement whenever it comes. And again, the people that are involved picking it, I hope they're aware of how big of a responsibility and big decision this is, and look forward to seeing who the new men's national team coach is.
Also, going a little bit off topic here for a second, so I'm going to throw something out at you that you weren't prepared for. But
what, that it's 4-0 TFC over Simcoe, and we missed announcing 3 goals?
No, I wasn't. I mean, yes, it is 4-0. That wasn't what I was going off of. This is something that you're really not prepared for. I've been really impressed with Kevin Blue since he took over as CEO of Canada Soccer. He's been very out front with everything. He's announced all these friendlies, which I know were probably in the works before he took over. But he was also very transparent with the money situation, and I thought that was really, really important for whoever took over to do exactly that. I don't know. I kind of want to get your opinion as a Canadian soccer player, what you've thought of his first 2 months of being in charge.
Yeah, it seemed like he was being as transparent as he could be at the beginning. I think it's too early to tell.
Yeah.
But from what I've heard, is a lot of positive things have been said about him. This is people that are involved with Canada soccer at a higher level than me. So for now, I'm going to take their word and optimistic.
Yeah, positive. I'm not saying he's great, but so far what we've seen has looked really good. So I'm hoping to see more of that. Anyways, Canada soccer looking for a new coach. We talked about a couple of them from the CPL, and man, CPL's in full swing. Niko, obviously you know that, playing in it, but 2 weeks in, we've gotten 2 matches for every single side. Who has kind of surprised you the most this year, whether it be a team, whether it be a player, whether it be someone from Vancouver, not in Vancouver? Who's kind of surprised you the most so far this year?
First thing I want to say about the CPL before I start talking about the teams is I can't believe it's taken 6 years for a decision like this to be made. But Derby Star, match balls that we use in the CPL, to make a red and white ball just makes so much sense.
Yep.
They'd be stupid to change the color of the ball for the next at least 5 years.
You love
Red
it,
and
eh?
white, keep the ball like that. I mean, it's a Canada flag. We're playing with the Canada flag in a sphere. I don't know, when I saw that and like they announced the ball. I mean, normally I don't really get this worked up or that excited about it. Like, as I feel like I'm like you when you talk about the jerseys.
Yep.
But I saw a red and white ball. I'm like, yeah, obviously that makes sense. You should never change that. So if anybody at CPL is listening to this, you're an idiot if you
Keep
change
it.
the match balls from red and white. Yeah, it just makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Your original question, who has impressed me, or kind of what has caught my eyes? I've been to now 3 CPL games, well, 1 Can Champ game, 2 CPL
Close
games.
enough.
So I've seen 3 CPL opponents. I had great seats. I was sitting courtside for those 3 games. Those 3 teams are Valor, Halifax, and Cavs. I could
All
kind
in
of
different
say,
spots right now.
yeah, I kind of say quick snippets on each one.
Yeah.
Well, which team would you want me to talk about first out of those 3?
Which one surprised you the most with how they played their first couple matches?
None of them really surprised me because when I think of the beginning of the season, for me, the beginning of the CPL season is the most difficult. These first 2 or 3 weeks. Um, you know, Squad rotation's massive in the CPL. So right away, you're trying to gel as a team. There's all this expectation, all this hype. You're trapped in a 6-week, 8-week preseason, just waiting for that first game. So much anticipation gets built over that time. That always, I feel like the first few weeks is very difficult. So nothing. I'm not going to look too deep into how the teams have looked. One thing that jumped out to me was Valor. 2024 Valor looks a hell of a lot like 2021 York United. Not only because Noah Verhoeven is in the midfield of that team, but I feel like they're a young, excited team. A bunch of like young, hungry Canadian players that like want to prove themselves, and a lot of them I feel like haven't gotten the opportunities that they might have liked up to this point in their careers. And that's kind of how I felt like that York United 2021 team was built. But in that, I still think there is a little bit of lack of experience. And what we might see is inconsistency throughout the season. But also, in the same time, moments of brilliance. And I think they're always going to be a difficult team to go up against when you kind of have that je ne sais quoi, that young blood, that hungry mentality.
Yeah.
And I think Phil Dos Santos, the coach there, kind of gives that to them even more. He gives them that freedom, and I think he's a coach that will pump as much confidence into them that they need. Even when we played them that first game, there was moments where they were good. I just felt like when we got that second goal, they kind of deflated a little bit, and I think that's also a sign of a young team.
Yeah, and I agree with you 100%. I think if we're looking at that Valor side, the youth is apparent, which is great. It's super important to have those kind of young players and giving them opportunities. I also think having a couple guys hurt to start the year never helps, right? That obviously puts you behind the eight ball where most of these teams, not all of them, but most teams are coming in fairly healthy. Like I love seeing I think it was Cavs yesterday ahead of your championship game. They posted their injury report, full squad healthy, and I was like, that's a great feeling for any team when
They
you have,
posted that.
huh? I
They
believe it was
posted
them. I
that.
thought it was them. I could be wrong. One
Okay.
team in the CPL has posted that this at least in the last couple days. And I was like, this is hilarious and also fantastic. To have a full squad healthy going into a match is really great. So I looked at that and I saw, okay, having a couple key players hurt, that hurts the start of the season without a doubt. That's just how it is. Unfortunately, having everyone healthy is not always possible. So the youth coming from Valor is going to be tested early in this season, and going up against you guys in their first match was not easy, and then they had a tough game in their second match as well. I think going into the next 3 or 4 games is kind of it's not make or break, but it could determine how this season goes for the young side. If they don't start getting results, and I don't even mean like necessarily winning games, but if they don't start seeing something positive from the games, performance, exactly. If they don't see something positive from the games in the next, I would say 3 to 4 weeks, the rest of the season might be a write-off. And I hate saying that because I do think there's a lot of talent on that side, and I do think the guys that they brought in could be very important, but when key players are out hurt and the youngsters are getting forced into positions and forced into playing time that they maybe weren't expecting to have, that puts you in a really weird situation. So for me, that Valor side needs to get some sort of performance-based result in the next few weeks in order to turn their season around.
Yeah, you said key players are missing. I think Taz Martakutis, not
He's one of
only
them for sure.
a key player. Phil Dos Santos even said he was a key signing for them. It's a key position. Center back is kind of very much that lock of the team, and when you got a guy like that with CPL experience missing, it hurts. And then probably one of their most offensive players in Kean Williams, he was also out injured for that game. So just off the top, those are two big players that they were missing, and they're looking forward to definitely getting back in the squad so they can have those strong performances that you alluded to.
Yeah, and on the flip side of their second match is a team that's kind of, I'm not going to say necessarily like shocked me, but surprised me a little bit with how they've started the year in Pacific. I've really been impressed with them to start the season. 2 wins out of 2. They beat Halifax in Victoria and then followed that up with a win against Valor in Victoria as well, 2-0. I've really liked the way that they've started the season. I don't know if it's going to continue for the whole year, but they're putting themselves in a good spot to start the season. I don't know what do you think about their game so far?
No, I mean, impressive. I mean, Pacific is always notorious for having really good starts.
Yeah.
I feel. I don't know if that speaks more about the club or James Merriman as a coach or just as a group as a whole. But yeah, a bit of a surprise as well, just because of the players that they lost, mainly in Manny Aparicio and Didic.
Yep.
I think big reasons why they've had a great start, like you said, is players stepping up to
Yes.
that moment. You lose a center back in Didic, who needs to step up, either center backs or the goalkeeper. I think Gazdov has had a great 2 games to start the season. You lose Manny Aparicio in the midfield, who needs to step up? Sean Young. I
And
think
he
he's always
has.
been a good CPL player, but now maybe he's always been overshadowed in the midfield by people that he's playing with.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be the year where he could really stand out and put a stamp as one of the top midfielders in this league, and he's been a consistently good midfielder in this league, and maybe has gone under the radar just for how good his team has been around him. But a great opportunity for him, and so far he's taken that.
Yeah, and I've been really impressed with them. And there's a couple players I also want to mention on as impressive as your side has been in Vancouver. There's a couple players in the league that I kind of want to talk on, and one of them is Paris G. I've been really impressed with him so far. I do think he's one of the more underrated players in the league as a whole, and I said that going back to
Just to
last
stop you
year.
there, I spoke to Jesse Daly just yesterday when we played Cavs, and he said the exact same thing. So I don't know if his tweet or your tweet came across his timeline and he saw that. But he said Paris G to me is the most underrated player in the league.
Yeah,
My
he's
response to him is I don't think he's underrated, but
maybe underappreciated prior to this year. I know
no,
you
I
you
guess
played
just
with him
because I've been
last year too.
teammates. Yeah, and I've always rated Paris really high, and anyone asks me, I'm like, yeah, Paris is one of our top players. So
Yeah, and
underrated
I
doesn't
agree. I
seem like the
think
right word, but Jesse said as well, so you're not crazy.
I think he may be slightly underappreciated in the CPL circles because most of the time when we talk defenders or even wingers, he's not one of the first names that comes up. But every time I see him play, he plays with the same consistency, no matter what position he's playing in, no matter what the rest of the lineup looks like. You're getting the same Paris Jeep every single game, and that's something that needs to be given the credit that it deserves. And I do think he's underrated for exactly that. Another guy that I want to shout out, Chris Twardek. In Ottawa, I think he's had two really, really good games to start the year. I know he gave up the own goal, which is just unfortunate to for Ottawa fans. Not necessarily the way you wanted to end that game because they probably were coming away with a victory if not for that. I've been really impressed with him.
Oh yeah, it would have been 1-0.
Yeah, I've been really impressed with him through two games.
Yeah, I mean, I had to be honest, I thought he was a striker. I don't know why. And now he's playing
He's a
outside
winger.
back.
He's
Yeah.
one of those like modified wingers who also play wing back. And they're playing with a 3-back winger system sort of thing in Ottawa, so he's covering a lot. It's very interesting to see, and that super team is something that we can talk about in another show with all the guys that they brought in. I don't know how it's going to work this year, but he's looked really good in the first couple games.
Yeah, no, definitely. Other teams, Halifax, we kind of skipped over them,
Yeah.
but all I would say, and again, I see on Twitter Halifax fans, some of them are freaking out, other ones are being a bit more, cool headed and say, no, trust Patrice. Last year they had a slow start as well. I don't think they had a win in their first 5 or 6 games or something like that, and everyone was panicking. And then by the end of the season, they were playing wonderful football. They made playoffs and they made a good little run. So for right now, I would trust Geyser Ball. I think they got a great team. They got a really strong midfield in Aiden Daniels, Jeremy Gagnon Lapare, and Lorenzo Cagliari.
Cagliari, yep.
Midfield. Leafs just scored. I think it was McMahon. No, not McMahon. McCabe. Anyways, Leafs just
McMahon's
scored.
not playing, so
Maple Leaf Square going nuts. Halifax got a good midfield, so have trust with them. I think it's still early doors. You don't want to judge any team right now,
no.
whether they're doing good or bad. Cavs, something I want to point out. Anyone who was kind of doubting Cavs, after their first two league games, similar to what I said earlier in the show, you're either an idiot or you don't know Canada soccer and you don't know the CPL.
Or you didn't watch the games and you just saw the results. Those are people.
Yeah,
Those are the other people who are
that's
freaking
kind of fair. That's a good point. Well, there's a lot of people that don't really watch the games and they just go off of results, but that's a whole different story. So yeah, that's what I would say about Cavs. I feel like they're always going to be in the mix, just the way that club is built, and just the squad in general. It's a stacked squad, so they'll be good. Lucas Diaz or Lucas, I don't know how you say it with the Portuguese. A very exciting player when he gets on the ball. Once again, I had great seats last night to watch him. But probably right now the most kickable legs in the CPL. He gets on the ball, he drives at players, he likes to dribble 1v1, but he wears his shin pads real low. I don't know. That was my first thought. Really exciting player, but sometimes, just looking at him, I'm licking my lips. I just wanted to kick him.
That's an interesting way to put it. Yeah, no, he's been very impressive this year when he's been on the pitch. Between him and Serge in that midfield, kind of one in, one out sort of thing, they've been really good. I think anyone who hasn't watched the games and just is going off of the results looks very concerned at Cavs. But if you actually watch the matches, a 2-1 loss to Forge in Hamilton, that's not a bad result. I know they probably were hoping to get something out of it. I thought they were going to win that game going into it just because of the whole redemption arc and how how focused that Cavs team was in the offseason. And then you go into Ottawa, who have just formed a super team that everyone keeps calling it, which, by the way, I think is the most ridiculous thing to say, but whatever.
Why do you think it's ridiculous? Why do you think it's ridiculous?
Because I don't think
Is
there's
that not a super team on paper?
see, that's why, because I don't go off of on paper because I don't know if this is going to work. I know they've gotten results in their first two games, a 2-1 win against York and then a 1-1 draw against Cavs. I don't know if this group is going to mesh properly. And that's my biggest concern with Ottawa. I think they have the talent. Don't get me wrong. Didic, Aparicio, all those guys are very, very, very talented. But
Oli
are they going to
Bassett,
mesh?
Pablo, Barcelona. Have you heard of them?
Yeah. Sorry, I was
I'm still
naming a
trying to
couple
figure.
guys. I'm sorry. I didn't name all of the new additions.
Okay. Well, Oli
Again, they're
Bassett's
very,
been a
very
mainstay.
talented on paper. If we go player for player and we put them up against any squad in the CPL, I'm not saying that they're probably not at the top. But my thing is do these players mesh? Do they play a similar enough system, or can they adapt to a similar enough system to have that success? I don't know yet. It's still too early to say that. And Niko, I agree. They're a very good side. I think they will be a playoff side. But are they going to be a 1 or 2, or are they going to be a 5? That's the question that I have.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, it's a big year for them. They have to,
They
and I think all their
have
fans are
to.
expecting they have to come home at the end of the season with one trophy, or I'm sure it'd be considered a failure.
Yeah, that 100%, that's the case. But again, until I see how this team meshes, 2 matches is not enough to see it. You just said it. It's too early in the season to actually have that conversation. Are these guys good enough to mesh together? Is the question that I have going in. And I think that's a great way to segue into our next segment when we're talking about storylines from this year. Because I want to know, I want to get your opinion. I'm going to give my opinion as well on this. What are the storylines that we're following going into this year? That is probably my number one, is whether or not this Ottawa team can mesh and become the super team that everyone keeps calling them. I don't like using that term until I see a team play, and that's why I think I've been hesitant to call them that personally. I'm using it on air because it's just easy, which is probably not a good thing, but whatever. Are they able to mesh and become that superpower team in the CPL? I don't know yet. I think they have the ability to. They have the players who could do it. I just need to see it happen. So that's my biggest storyline right now. What about you?
Can my biggest storyline is, can a new CPL team win the championship, win the North Star Shield at the end? We have Pacific, we have Forge. I mean, Forge has had this dominance now
Yeah.
for a long time. Can a new team step up and really, put their, imprint on this league? I think that'll be great for the league, but it's a very tough task, as you know. 4 of the last 5 years, Forge has been victorious, so it's a great challenge for all the other CPL teams to do something.
And if we're looking at it right now, this might be the year to do it. Because Forge is different. This is not the same Forge team we've seen. They lost 3 defenders from last year's championship side. Tristan Henry is no longer there. This is a different back end for this Forge team. And you talk about it all the time. Championships are won with defense, right? Defense and goaltending win championship. Well, their defense and goaltending is very different. Is it going to live up to the same standards that they've built over the last 5 years? It's a great question. I do think Kalongo's a very good goalie, by the way. I'm not saying that he's not, but can he live up to Tristan Henry? Can that defense mesh together and be good enough to live up to what they've done over the last 5 years? It's a good question. Offensively, we know that they're going to get goals. We know that they're going to play well. They're going to possess the ball really well. The question for me is, defensively, are they going to be good enough to continue that kind of trend? Right? And so this might be the
Yeah.
year where we see an Ottawa, a Cavs, a Vancouver, a Halifax, right? These teams that are pushing for
Oh,
playoff
now
spots.
York.
York as well. Sorry, I just naming off teams off the top of my head, right? Any team, could this be the year that we see one of them dethrone Forge? It's possible.
Yeah. I think another big storyline I'd love to get your opinion on is, York, new ownership, how that club, just how that club goes first year under new ownership. I think that's that's going to be a big storyline and a continuing storyline all throughout the year.
Absolutely. And how they kind of perform, because they brought in a lot of new players, mostly because they had to. Um, how do they kind of come together with the new ownership? How does it all mesh together? It's a big, big question mark right now. And it's something that we're going to have to follow. Another one that I have for storyline is, what about Valor? Are they going to be able to turn it around from a very, very poor 2023, where they finished dead last? Are they going to be able to turn it around and start to find some footing this year with a very young squad? We already talked about that earlier. That's another storyline I'm very interested in keeping an eye on.
Yeah. I think in professional sports, and it's kind of the brutal side of professional sports, but it is also the reality, and anyone involved with it just understands. In your opinion, I'll pose the question to you. Which coach do you think is on the hot seat right now to keep his job?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think the only one on the hot seat, whether it's fair or not, might be.
Life's not fair.
No, life's not fair, but I also don't think he's done anything to deserve to be on the hot seat. I think it's Dos Santos in Valor, which I don't think is fair, because I think he's done a very good job with what he's been given. He just hasn't been given a ton, which makes it very, very difficult to have success. Whereas, like, if we're talking about Halifax, is super happy with Patrice. I don't think he goes anywhere, even if they do struggle this year, because he got them to the playoffs. He did all that last year in his first season. I think he's locked in. I don't think Ottawa's looking for a new coach. They're pretty happy with their manager. Maybe we throw Nashi in there if York struggles for the first 3 months and they're well out of a playoff run at that point. Maybe his name gets thrown in there as well. Cavs, you're not getting rid of Tommy. Bobby's not going anywhere for Forge. Afshin's secure in Vancouver by the looks of it. And you mentioned Merriman's done a fantastic job in Pacific. I don't think any of those guys are up for debate. So really it comes down to either Dos Santos or Nash for the guy who's going to be on the hot seat the fastest. And I just think because the squad's young, they're going to struggle the most. It probably will be Dos Santos who gets put on that hot seat position fastest.
Yeah,
and again, I don't think it's fair to either of them, because I think they've both done well with what they've been given. But life's not fair. It's professional sports. We understand how it is. I just think, unfortunately, those are the two.
It's so funny because I asked that question and I almost feel like, I mean, everyone, we're kind of like tiptoeing around answering and stuff like that. But I mean, you look at all the, big time leagues in North America, the NHL, the MLB, NFL, talking about coaches getting fired there. It's no problem. People are ruthless. This guy sucks after 2 games. You should get rid of him. Even the EPL in England. So
it's true.
I mean, if we want ambitions to be like a soccer country, and we want to compare ourselves, to the higher ups. I mean, look at Bob Bradley. He got sacked from TFC. I mean, this is a club in Canada.
Yep.
This is kind of the conversations that the media shouldn't be like shying away from. It's the reality of sports. Constantly, players are getting scrutinized for does he deserve to be coming back next year? Contract negotiations, all of this. So, in the coaching world, it should be treated the exact same.
And I 100% agree with you. And I'm very, very critical of coaches when I don't think they're doing a good job, right? I was very critical of Bob Bradley. I didn't think he was the right fit for TFC. These guys, I just don't think it's fair to criticize them, because I think they've been given a bad hand. Like Nashi last year dealt with so many injuries with that York side that it was very tough to have. He didn't even have a center back for like 3-week span at one point, where they had Brem Samaru and I think Paris was playing center back.
Paris,
right? Like,
and Johnny Grant.
Right? Those guys aren't center back. Can they play there? Yes, but they're not center backs. When you have that kind of stuff going on, it's not really fair to judge the coach, because he's trying to just put together a roster at that point, let alone a quality side. So that's why I say it's a little unfair, but results matter. So when it comes down to it, is it unfair? Maybe not. And you're right. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. I was just curious.
No, it's a
I
fair
wanted to
question.
bring it up. I haven't heard that kind of conversation really being had in the media space. So I figured
Fair
why not
question,
bring
though.
it up on Footy First.
A fair question. Um, quickly, do you have outside of Vancouver? Okay, it's a kind of a double question here. Who are your favorites for the season? And is there a squad that you think needs to do something in the summer window to really give themselves a better chance here?
Oof. Good question. If I mean, who do I like? I think you got to dethrone the champions until you say anyone else. So for me right now, Forge is going to start off as the favorite. We're only 2 games in, but I mean they started off with 2 wins. They look strong, so I'm going to say them. As for what changes needs to made right now, I think the only changes that need to be made in the squads that we kind of spoke about. Let's just use Valor as an example. Is their medical team needs to figure it out, and they need to get
Elf.
get guys back healthy. So that's what those are the changes that need to be made. A healthier roster. Let's go back to that question maybe in 6 weeks times, and see how the league pans out, where squads sit then. But yeah, I mean, I gave advice to CPL fans to just calm down, cool heads, so early in the season. So as for changes, uh, going into the season, I'm sure every single squad and every GM and every team meeting that every team had, like, we like our team, we're backing our
Yeah,
chances to do something this year. So everyone seems pretty confident in their squad. It's a
yeah,
salary cap league,
it is.
so we're all playing on level playing field. As crazy as it seems that Ottawa was able to build this super team in a salary cap league, but I'm told by the commissioner everyone's playing by the rules, so it's all
We
even
play
playing
on.
field.
We play
Yeah.
on. Yeah, I think I agree with you. Forge has to be a favorite just because they are Forge. I really like Vancouver's roster. I said it before. We were talking before you even signed there. I really liked what they did in the offseason. I think it's going to be a very strong side. Cavs is another team that you just can't write off. I know they haven't had the greatest of starts, but it's Cavs. They always find ways to win games, and they always find the way to get into the playoffs and make a deep playoff run. I like their roster. I think they're going to be good. Those are probably my 3 favorites right now. So, quickly, let's get into the Canadian Championship before we get out of here, Nico. And I want to talk about the big story in the Can Champ, and that's the Victoria Highlanders having to withdraw from the Canadian Championship because of money restrictions because they're no longer playing in League One. Do you think this is a bigger issue at the League One level that could become something bigger, or is this kind of like a one-off anomaly?
Oof, tough question. I would say it's a one-off anomaly. It's a bit unfortunate, probably definitely for the players that were
Yeah,
expecting to be, having such a big moment, the magic of the cup. You saw that they did last year when they beat Valor as well. That gave such a good platform for those players on that roster.
the Rovers roster,
Um,
not the Highlanders. Different
sorry,
team.
that's what I mean. Yeah, but going off the magic of the
Yeah.
cup and all that. So it's unfortunate. I don't know. What do you think about it? League One, I'm almost too far out of that
You've
right now.
removed yourself almost from it because of that, right?
I don't know. What do you think?
Um, I think I think there's the potential that this could become a bigger issue. I don't think it is right now. Right now, it's a one-off anomaly for me, but with the way League One's kind of set themselves up and how they're starting to move forward, which I do think is positive for most aspects, they are asking more out of community clubs for how many people can seat the stadium can seat, how much they have to buy in. That's a lot to ask for some community clubs. Don't get me wrong. It's a positive thing if we're trying to move Canada soccer forward. I'm not saying that it's not, but we could see more sides like Victoria have to pull out of League One for those type of reasons. And I hope it's not the case. I really do, but this could be the problem. This could be the next steps for this.
Do the clubs not get support from Canada Soccer to help maintain these standards? I think it's good that Canada Soccer is enforcing the standards on these clubs, but if all of a sudden a club who does have history in Canada, it's not like this club is just on its first year, kind of like Electric City, but like, is there aid in helping them, and did they get a grace period to meet the requirements? And if we don't have the answer set, that's kind of the question I'd like to pose to Canada Soccer. If it was kind of like cut through and like, sorry, you don't have it, you're done, and we're not really helping you,
Well,
yeah,
they pulled
that'll be a
themselves out
problem.
because they realized they might not, won't be able to meet the expectation. And I'm sure there is a grace period. Like you have to have something set up in the next X amount of years. I don't know for sure, but that's how most leagues work. And I mean, we saw it with the Arizona Coyotes in the NHL. They've had 15 years to get a new rink, and they just haven't been able to do it. And that's why they no longer have a team. There has to be a grace period. It's just how long of that grace period it was, and if teams could meet that expectation. Not to mention the monetary restrictions around it is also another thing. So I just don't know how long that grace period was to get up to the required expectation, but that's where I'm at with that.
Fair enough. Yeah, it'll be interesting, but I do like that there are these standards now being pushed on in and not only the
Yeah.
CPL teams and the MLS clubs, but the League One clubs.
Yeah.
Again, big picture, I think League One Canada is going to be massive, and I'm thinking more like 15 years
Yes.
from now. It'll be um, very similar to what we see in the junior hockey, world in
CHL
Canada here.
level.
Just it's regionalized, and you get the top younger players in there an opportunity to get good, important games. I think it's going to be crucial for Canada Soccer and the growth of this game. So I like that they're pushing the standards, and that's only going to be a positive. Is it unfortunate for them having to remove themselves? Yes, but again, we're a bit too soft here in Canada. So if we're going to keep pushing the envelope, it's kind of like, keep up. We
Yeah.
can't. We've been dragging a lot of clubs and a lot of organizations for a long time.
Agreed. And quickly before we get off the Canadian Championship, I have one easy question for you, Niko. Is this the year a CPL team officially makes the final? I know Forge technically made the final in 2020, but that was like a weird COVID year reason, so I'm not going to count that. Is this the year that a CPL team can beat not just maybe one MLS side, but potentially two to get to the final?
Yeah, I mean, I've thrown out the bracket since we've been eliminated, but yeah, I believe that CPL team. I think this each year the CPL gets stronger and stronger. So I think this is the best chance for a CPL team to make the finals. So yeah, why not? This is the year. Winning it is going to be a whole other story, but getting to the final is definitely the biggest bet. Oh, Max Domi just bodied Swayman, the Boston goalie, during a TV timeout.
Oh, goody, this is going to be a problem.
Yeah, Max Domi is what we needed. Pat Maroon's going insane on the bench.
Yeah,
That fat guy.
You know that was going to happen. All right, Niko, let's get to some looking ahead here, and we each have a match that we're looking forward to. So let's start with yours. Who do you have?
You start.
You want me to start?
You start.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, I'll start. Well, my match this week that I'm looking forward to is the Pacific Cavs game, and we've talked a lot about both these sides, and I think for me, I mentioned the Pacific side being very impressive so far. I'm looking forward to continuing that. And I think they have a very good opportunity here. They're going into Calgary. If they can get a result from this, that's really, really positive for them for the beginning of the season. I know it's still early and there's still lots of games to be played, but going into Cavs home, beating them in Spruce Meadows is huge. On the flip side, Cavalry, a team that has quote unquote struggled in their first two games. I know they had two probably of the toughest matchups you could get in your first 2 weeks on the road. They have an opportunity to turn things around, get a big win against a top club in CPL. I think this is a great game to watch this weekend.
Yeah, I like that. I think that'd be the match of the week in the CPL, probably.
And that's why they named it the match of the week.
Is it?
Yeah.
Damn, for some reason I thought Vancouver and York was.
No, unfortunately not this week.
Okay. My match of the week, and I'm afraid to see this lower third that's going to pop up because as we prep for this episode, I told you that Vancouver Whitecaps was playing Austin, but they're not.
No, they're not.
No.
Who are they
They're
playing?
playing Red Bulls. Red Bulls.
Come on, you think I wouldn't have had that right?
Well, why didn't you correct me when I was talking to you?
Because I didn't realize it till this morning.
Yeah. because I went to speak to, my Whitecaps insider, and I sent him a text saying, "Hey, well, what do you think of your chances? Going up against Austin?" And he goes, "Well, first off, we don't play Austin this weekend. We actually play New York. Um, so there's that. That's the game I'm looking forward to, mainly because Vancouver been on this red hot start to start the MLS. I think Vanni Sartini is the most exciting head coach to watch on the sidelines and catch his post game pressers. The team is playing exciting football. I think Gold again. I said Gold last year was my underground pick of MVP, and he had a wicked year. Same thing now, wearing the captain's armband. He's picked up right where he left off last year. I love a Canadian team having success in the MLS. Right now, they're in second place. They're going up against New York Red Bulls, who's second place in the East. So two heavyweights right now in the MLS going up against each other. Whitecaps, this is going to be a big test because they were in the West Coast. They played Seattle, big 2-0 win there. Now let's see how they travel going across the entire country, going up in New York. I think it's going to be a great battle, and seeing if they could continue that form that they've been on.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a really fun game. I love that you picked this one because you have second in each conference going head to head, and you said the travel is going to be really, really interesting as well. So great pick for you. I think my game's going to be a lot of fun too. It's going to be a good weekend for footy.
Great.
All right, dude, that's all I got for you today. Is there anything else you want to add quickly before we head out?
No, I'm on the road this entire week. We're in Calgary yesterday, flew this morning to Toronto, so I'm back in my hometown now. It's basically homecoming week for me. Played my previous club, Calgary. Now I'm back playing York on Friday, so just a trip down memory lane. So yeah, looking for. It's been a cool little road trip.
Yeah, I bet. And I mean, is it weird coming home to Toronto and staying in a hotel as opposed to maybe like staying with your parents or in your in your place last year?
Well, the hotel that we're staying in right now is about 200 meters. I look out the window of my hotel room and I see the condo that I was living in last year. So it was a bit weird. No, not really, just because I'm in the same neighborhood.
Yeah, fair
So
enough.
similar thing. I'll have the same pregame walk as I've had the last 3 years.
Fair enough. All right, man. Well, it's been a lot of fun getting back to this, and I'm really excited to get the show back up and running full time as much as we can. So thank you for joining me today. Folks, make sure you tune in to all of our socials. We got a lot coming your way. And don't forget, enjoy the games this weekend because we will. Thank you for listening, everybody. We'll see you next time.